Okay, everyone, recording is starting. You can start your meeting, Peter.
Good morning, everyone. This is the December 5th, 2023 Educational Optimization Committee meeting. The agenda was posted on Board Book. So our first agenda item is call to order and verification of quorum. And looks like we have a quorum, although I will ask a point of information, maybe to Steve or Lisa. Does it require 2 or 3 board members in the future to meet the criteria of a quorum?
2.
2. Okay, so we're good. So, and Chad was able to join us by phone, which is excellent.
Yes, I'm here too.
Excellent. All right. So our second agenda item is the superintendent report on EDS Space 2023 conference.
Thank you, Peter. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if Jody taught me well.
I see it.
Oh, good.
Good job.
Way to go, Jody. Okay. So thank you. I also invited Mr. Cross, who's laughing at me, to come to this meeting because he was part of it. And basically, I'd like to give you an overview of kind of our thoughts coming out of really a terrific week. We went to Charlotte, North Carolina, to go to an Ed Spaces National Convention. At that convention, you had educators, teachers, principals, superintendents, you had architects, you had firms that specialized in particular furniture design and designers. It was really very well attended, and we were there for 4 days. We went to a variety of workshops, splitting up. The workshops ranged from things like designing space to drive intervention, reimagining learning, positive schools as community assets, student agency, sustainability, reimagine design processes for student safety and belonging. These are just a few of the topics. And what was really cool was at the workshop, every workshop we went to had a variety of furniture, and all I kept thinking about was Chad, because I remember, Chad, you kept pushing me to think about furniture. And
Yeah.
you would have loved
Yay. Appreciate that. Thank
You
you.
would have loved to have seen this furniture. I have many pictures of us in this different furniture, but to go to like a class and experience the furniture was kind of all part of it. So this is kind of a summary of us bringing it all together. Mr. Cross was there. We also took the director of pupil services, Tracy Edwards, who, fun fact, she also has an extensive elementary background, having been an elementary school administrator. Dan Doak went, as well as the middle school principal. So let's see if I can move this along the correct way. Okay, go. Okay, so we all know that we are committed, and this is in our action plan, to working with the town on a cohesive, integrated plan for schools and the government space, because the schools are the town and the town are the schools, and we do share space, and we need to be cognizant of that. We share space at central office, finance, and the police department and town hall offices share space. We share space with the pools and the gyms and the fields, all of the space that is used by our community. And so it's really important as we work through this to be lockstep with the town, because we also have to, we have a fiduciary responsibility to the Weston taxpayers that we're well aware of. So a shared mindset around teaching and learning and a shared mindset around design in schools is really essential. The way we teach matters, and some of this is common sense, but it kind of, my goal here in presenting to you and then to go to the faculty and the administrative team to kind of synthesize everything around what that mindset looks like, kind of to articulate it clearly. So the way we teach matters, and we must have a student-centered approach. And people have been working on this, especially the last few years, to really make it more student-centered. And the other thing is we have to connect the academic achievement with students' social emotional well-being. At the conference, they talked a lot about the sense of agency. Student sense of agency is what we know as, setting achievable goals, persevering, solving problems, demonstrating that grit, advocating for oneself, overcoming obstacles, all of that, and finding success is really, really important. So in our professional learning days, starting last year under the direction of Dr. Henkel, we spent a lot of time on the universal design for learning. And that continued in our November days. It continued last summer, where when we worked on writing curriculum, we're really looking at those three, the red, yellow, and green of the umbrella. The why of learning, right? The multiple means of engagement, the what, how do we represent learning in the classroom, and the how. How do we get children to express it? It's along the lines of normalizing what every student needs to be successful, and how can we design our curriculum and instruction to illustrate that. One of the best examples is what's going on in math classes now, and that's with the making thinking transparent. And you walk into a middle school math class in 8th grade and it looks very different than it did 2 years ago. The blue of the umbrella is an addition, and it talks about the where of learning and how we use space to effectively deliver instruction for learning. So the shared mindset on intentional design of space, they talked a lot about that a lot, is that the space matters. And what does a student-centric design reflect? That whole sense of safety, empowerment, peer collaboration, stress management. What does that look like? Flexibility. And so our challenge is to connect these principles that we've been working on both in the classroom and in designing curriculum to spaces in school and overall to our campus design. And they also at the conference talked a lot about salutogenic design of space. Salud in Spanish, all I thought means health. I'm going to show you a really short video that I think captures what that means. Like 50 seconds. Oh, you can't see it. All right, it's a really great video. You can't see it. I'm going to have to go back. But literally, I want to show it to the staff because in some arguments you can make, it shows the spaces that we have already in the school, but not just at scale.
Lisa, sorry to interrupt, but can you share that via a link later on or something? We can watch it on our own time.
I will, because it's really good link, and my technology is not that great. But I'll get to, because it's a very concise link, and it looks like they could be filming, quite frankly, some parts of it in our schools.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see that, so please do share it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I will share it. And I don't know, Jody, if you can go in and type it in the chat or whatever. So all these days and workshops and things that we went to and reading and everything else, we kind of tried to put them in specific sort of, I guess I would say, buckets or circles of what school design looked like. The most important thing that we kept coming back to was that shared ownership of space, that it has to be welcoming, it has to be joyful, there has to be a sense of community. How do we create learning spaces that are multi-use, community spaces, library, cafeteria, gym? And we saw some of that when we went on a couple of our visits already right here in Connecticut, where it was a very purposeful design to let the public in, but at the same time keeping students safe, and how to do that. We have to look at them in the red circle now. It talks about safety being a multifaceted approach. You have the physical, obvious safety. You have the social, emotional health, well-being, restorative spaces. Where can students go to kind of decompress, and staff if they're working through something? I think about our DBT training. The whole sustainability. We met a superintendent and a principal that did an amazing job at a school in Minnesota, where the entire elementary school is based on environmental stewardship. Unbelievable. To the point where they had machines that ground up the composting. Remember, Phil, you were in that with me, right? It was like, what do you mean you ground up? They had some kind of, they named it, right? Like a trashinator or something, the kids. It looked like a monster. But what can we do here? We have beautiful natural surroundings, outdoor learning spaces, get to more net zero waste. We're moving forward with our composting program, which I think is great. What else can we do? And there was a lot of talk also about the idea of beauty and calm, natural light, acoustics, both how to do acoustics so that they are calming as well as voice enhancement capabilities with technology when it's necessary for students that are hearing impaired. Color palettes. I never thought so much about colored palettes and textured materials. How if you put too much color and too many patterns, how distracting that can be, and how we can kind of avoid doing that. The whole thing on air quality, which I know Peter is a big proponent of. What does the quality of air look like? How can you make those systems quiet so they're not distracting to students? And again, in the gold thing, the whole idea of a flexible learning space, student agency, and how to develop furniture in a classroom that works for everyone. It was interesting. They said you had to get away from the mindset of 24 identical seats. It's 24 seats. Where do people want to sit? Or if you do 20 identical seats, what other flexible seating do you have? And, I was really happy when I went to the science lab at the high school the other day without any of this work. I walked into a class and I'm like, yes, the teacher, the desks, the tables had always been arranged like big, long tables. And then the labs were in the back. And the teacher did something as simple as moving the tables. So now they were clustered in groups of 4. And she had a sample rolling desk that we had seen in a lot of our walkthroughs. She had approached the principal of the school about that. So people are thinking and making that connections, which I think is really powerful. What can we do now before even spending any money? How can we make it more student-centered? As I said, there are pockets of this. You look at Hurlbut and the ELC, and that's probably the best example we have. How do we get that kind of environment in other classrooms at Hurlbut? And Hurlbut's pretty great. They have flexible seating in all of the classrooms. How can we raise that to another level to make smaller groups and be able to flex it out? They spend time on those big kidney tables and how much space they take up in a classroom, how you can recreate it with 3 smaller tables and roll it around and move it out. They talked about defronting the room, where if the teacher owns 25% of the room with the desk and that setup, how can we reduce that space to give more space to students? And it can be done through furniture. I don't know if you're aware, but it's coming to the board. The PTO is working with Hurlbut to do a new makerspace plan right off the library. And I'm really pleased to say that Sharon Rotko is so on board with this work. And this was one of the slides that she presented at the PTO meeting. The intermediate school also, the library media specialists have really stepped up. Shelley Reines has done an amazing job converting that space into a student-centered, welcoming, salutogenic design. Over here, you also have an example of the outdoor space. We have a para professional named John Basigli, who is related to Basigli Park, believe it or not, and he has taken over that courtyard with students and done some amazing projects in there. Again, the whole outdoor learning space. At the middle school, we've made strides. We need to obviously take it a lot further. Again, in the library area, the TV studio, the flexible furniture that we see there. We have more students doing murals. The picture down at the bottom is in a math class where students are up and actively engaged in making their thinking transparent in whiteboards that are all around the room. And at the high school, again, we have pockets of it. The lobby, the College and Career Center, we have the community class selling coffee. I don't know, how often is it, Phil? Once or twice a month, they send out a blast and they have their own little business there in the Galleria. We have examples of being outside with our yoga and PE program component. The kids are planting daffodils and all kinds of flowers with sustainability. And then we also have our alternative pathways in the bottom corner. The kids painted a mural in both of their spaces to kind of own their learning. Our challenge now is to get this more at scale and to infuse it in any design moving forward with the schools. So when we look at next steps, last year, the administrative team and the faculties in the different buildings did discuss the FOC and the different models and the different proposals that the town worked on. And we do feel strongly that we need the 4 schools and that the grade configuration is correct. It provides students with what they need in each of the grades, and the site is correct where we are. We just have to figure out how to enhance it, if you will. I think that we need to review the existing studies through that lens of student-centric and salutogenic designs. I've gone back and looked at them. I even went back and looked at the Petrocelli, Silver Petrocelli designs to see what, to kind of look at it through the lens of our campus and how can we develop the best plan, I guess I would say. Going back and looking at Tecton through that lens and saying, gee, Phil and I were looking at it with Tina and Tracy. How could we tweak this? How could we do this with the design? What are some possibilities of thoughts with existing studies that we have to enhance them? We clearly have to collaborate with the town. And then the last 3 bullets are really important because you can build a beautiful school, renovate a school, do whatever, but you must make sure that the faculty has that shared mindset of what it needs to look like. We have to continue as a faculty in the different buildings, analyze existing spaces. I would propose we do some school walkthrough teams of teachers that are interested in looking at the space we have. Something as simple as decluttering. They spend time talking about decluttering and overstimulus, for example. What about some of the rooms? Is there a way to flex that space in those rooms, in those pods of classrooms? We are continuing our PD on universal design for learning. In the next PD session, we will be looking at developing, they have to practice some of the units and how to craft that. And I would take it a step further. One of the exercises we went through was, they said, okay, you understand UDL. Now take the different categories. Here's a blank UDL umbrella, if you will. Write in the furniture and the technology and the space you think you need. And that was a very powerful exercise. Like, just wipe this slate clean and think about it. And so we would like to do that with the staff as part of their professional learning. And then we need to branch out from there. This was a great book. They recommended a couple books and I got it. It's The Space for Leaders. There's The Space for Educators. And there were a few really powerful things I think that the book said. It talked again about the space, teaching and learning, and academic achievement. It talked about the vision and the shared mindset of intentional design. Number 3 is the hardest, I think. Inertia and tradition can make this the hardest work. Teachers are used to, even though they might not stand always in the front of the room now, they're used to having a spot in the front of the room. How can we defront the room? How can we explain the importance of this work to people that, everyone's gone to school and they have that traditional mindset of what space looks like or kind of looks like, or this worked for me, or this is fine. And we learned it's not fine. Like, there's ways to change it that also are not going to changes right now that would really cost very minimal. And I think that when you focus on the space and student-centric design, this really resonated with me. We empower teachers to craft a space that brings out their best work and really allows them to feel safe to take positive risk for students. The last page of the book had a statistic. Ours was even higher. And it said, ours is, I figured it out, our kids spend almost 16,000 hours in school until they graduate. And so, you look at 16,000 hours and you think about, they deserve spaces that are decluttered, that are student-centric, that are focused on learning. They deserve spaces that are caring and supportive, that mirror the care and support that the teachers give. And I think that this is a real exciting time to be able to do this work. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing. That's kind of a summary. My intention is to share this presentation as well with the administrative team and then with the faculties at the different schools, because I think that it's important that we kind of set the expectation that this is really important, this shared mindset. Phil, I don't know if you have anything you want to add from going on the conference?
No, I think, Lisa, that pretty much summarizes all the various components that we saw at the conference.
So it was great. I'm so glad we went. I was hesitant. I am so glad we went. It was really, really terrific.
Okay, that's phenomenal. I think, do we want to ask questions of the presentation, Stephen? Just
Yeah, Peter, this is Chad. I want to add a little color if possible, but I don't need to go first at all.
no, you're on the phone. Go for it.
Go for it.
Okay. First, I want to go through this a little bit structured. First of all, Lisa, you didn't ask for praise, but I'm going to give you some praise anyway, because if we're talking about doing some of these efforts you're talking about, typically in an institution, the first place that the inertia and tradition gets calcified is from the very top. So the fact that you're open to this and you're looking at this, it really is a tip of the hat to your leadership. And I'll give you another example. One of the real efforts and I think victories that came out of all the focus on school safety last year was your openness to taking two pieces of input from the community, both with the SMART training and also with the threat assessment training that we did. And I know I'm getting off topic, but the point still is consistent here, which is you having the ability to be open to new ideas from the leadership, that cascades down through the entire organization. So good job. That's the first thing I would share about this. The second is that I really struck on everything that you just said about how the guiding vision of whatever we do has to be about what happens on the inside and the learning that happens, as opposed to trying to reverse engineer these things. Because 16,000 hours, that is an astonishing number. If anyone has paid attention to the number that often gets thrown about how many hours it takes to truly master something, I mean, like total mastery, that number is often cited at 10,000 hours. So we're talking about the number that it takes to master something truly, and then another, effectively 60% on top of it. It's a colossal amount of time. So the idea that we would go about anything with the EOC without the focus being entirely on what the experience is on the inside is foolish. So I just absolutely applaud you for recalibrating us towards what happens on the inside. Now, the final comment I will make is that the other thing that's very exciting about this is that many of these efforts are 100% integrated. What I mean by that is if you've listened to parent comments over the last 3 years, which we have, there's a big consistent theme of mental health. Well, a lot of what you're talking about, physically moving throughout the day, being in flexible relationship to chairs, and therefore getting some metabolic movement going, natural light that helps brain activity, cleaner air that helps brain activity, social emotional learning. All these things are little tiny things that we can do to nudge forward the way that we're thinking about these big challenges our students face, one of them being mental health. So I will pause there because I don't have any specific questions yet, but I just want to reinforce some really powerful and exciting themes I heard in everything you just said.
Thanks.
Steve, you want to comment, or do you want me to start? Whatever. Either of us can dig in if you have something pressing.
No, nothing pressing.
All right. So I want to stick to the discipline of an agenda, but I think Jody was wise in making it a little more general and specific. And this is where we've diverged from other agendas that I've seen for our colleagues in their respective committee meetings, which is good to start. And I'll get back.
Don't diverge too much.
No, I know. But I will gap fill a little bit on our agenda at the end because we're missing some elements that are common to all the agendas. But I'll wait till. I like the reaffirmation of some of the thoughts that we had informally. And, I'm into these RE- words, right? Like rejuvenation and reconfiguration. I like the word recalibrate now and recycle and reorient. I think we'll add all those to our efforts as we move forward, because I think it encapsulates maybe some of the less physical aspects of this, but more of the more sort of emotional, intellectual aspects of what we're asking of ourselves and teachers and parents and taxpayers and students. Practically, I think this is a good start to like a living document, right? Because we needed somewhere to start. I had produced a first stab at a living document, but maybe we can create this as a living document and keep adding on to it sectionally as we learn more and investigate. And then the last point I wanted to make was, you produced this great section 7, future planning. And I wanted to revisit that in 2 ways, because one is some of the presentation captures some of the goals that we're striving for, right? And there's some deadlines coming up. And then, Jody, this is the most I'll deviate. We do have a couple of activities that are ongoing, right, that we need to address. And I'm not quite sure if we need to create a new agenda item for January to address them, but I'll vocalize them, and then we can decide how we want to add them to the next meeting. One is just the repairs. I think Phil has quite a substantial and scrutinizing list of repairs that are necessary in the short term. And 2 is sort of these on-site visits to learn from other schools, which I know some have happened. We haven't addressed it in this committee meeting, but we should at least return to those, if not in the next one. We'll add those as agenda items. I think that's all I wanted to say for this meeting. Did we want to talk about any of those, or do we want to make those January agenda items, because their deadlines are sort of creeping up on us? So at least we should make an attempt to address how we're doing towards the deadline.
I think it'd be really helpful to understand, Phil, from your side, if everything was static, your anticipated capital improvement needs over the next 5 years.
Yeah, we do have that list. We're starting to compile that list, and it will be part and parcel to our budget discussions.
Right.
But we do have one in the short term and also in the long term as well.
Yeah, I think that will go a long way to determining the level and what type of work we do on the various school buildings. We also need, as a group, to coordinate with the town, because the town has plans for town buildings. And then with the Board of Finance, although I've had some conversations with Mike Imber about the amount of capital that we'll have. We is us and the town. But that aside, I think as a board, as a full board, we're going to have to determine initially school configuration, 1, 2, 3, 4 schools, no schools, one big school, whatever it's going to be. What we think is best, without taking into account cost. I think we need to decide what we think the proper configuration is and the amount of work that's going to be done, and then we'll back our way into whether or not we can afford that. So it's kind of like what comes first. But I do think we need to think about how we want to deliver education over the next 20 years, or as far out as we can possibly look rationally, what the right configuration is, both in the physical plant and then, the mandate for this committee is what's going to go on inside the school. So it's a big task. And at some point, we're going to have to open this up. We need to open this up to the community and have community members join us. But this is kind of like the first serious meeting of our group, first serious meeting of many. And then to Lisa's earlier comment and Peter's comment, we're going to need help on this, professional help. And I don't know, Lisa, if we can meet with that consultant that you were introduced to that Westport uses.
We can certainly do that. We can also meet with the people that we work with, Tecton, and share our ideas with them. I think that the people that Westport used, the work they did was kind of in conjunction with the town. So I don't know, they can do both. would this, how can I say this? And I agree with everything that's being said. This kind of, you are sort of my guinea pig to practice my presentation that I want to share with, the faculty and everything else. Is this something that I should share with the entire board to kind of prime the pump for this work? Or are we not ready to do that?
I'll speak as one vote of three. First of all, I think it's an incredibly important way to think about, to use a tired metaphor, skinning this cat. I think it does an excellent job putting the focus on what happens inside the walls and how configuration and philosophy can guide that. So I would say I'm a big fan of sharing this with the board to prime the pump. And it seems like there's probably an argument that like we should do that while you're so creatively on fire from these ideas, both you, Lisa, and also you, Phil. So my thought would be, yes, I don't see a huge downside from waiting on that, but that's just one vote of three.
So when would be the appropriate time? Would this be a committee report during our next public meeting? And we would add we would maybe shorten it a little bit, but then add a couple of slides about the discussion of the next level of work, which is really a well-worded part of our agenda. So sort of Steve and Chad and I and Phil and Lisa have already talked about sort of the next level of work. It could be the compilation of the repair list. It could be which outside agencies and entities do we approach Westport. Even Mike Supa, right, last night talked about their facility planning capability, right? And he's pretty much got a pulse on what's happening here. My favorite idea and others could be a slide, right? And then I just wanted to add, right, I've been doing work with the UConn group on building health. I forgot to report on that, but I met with them yesterday, a little short conference call. They're going to give us basically the recipe of what they do, what they did at Bridgeport or proposed, what they do at the DOE. So I think I'll have a slide for that recipe for a public meeting next month. It's really fascinating. It covers a few of the Venn diagram that we saw, a few of the issues in the Venn diagram that we saw from earlier. So I'll bring them in, but that could be where we present a shortened version of this with some next level of work bullets, just so they're cognizant of what's happening in the short term, but we're also showing that we're meeting some of the future planning milestones that we're setting in the dip.
Peter, not to give a differing opinion, but I agree with you. I don't think it was overly long, actually. I think it went into a lot of detail, and given the length of presentations, including the last night's on enrollment, which was jam-packed and full of really useful data, I thought this was actually a pretty tight walkthrough of the takeaways from the workshop and also some guiding principles for what we're about to do. So not to be a minority on that, but I think it was pretty tight.
All right, we do have Mike's inputs from last night as a slide because it was pretty insightful.
Agreed. Absolutely agree.
The starting point was 2023, fall of 2023, and our current campus. Where do you go from there? So that's not static, but that's sort of, we have a stake in the ground. Where do we go from there? His work's really good there. So maybe I'll bend a little bit and agree with that on this one.
The only thing I would suggest, and we actually don't have a very heavy agenda in December, so we could do it then if you think. I would tweak a couple of these slides.
Can I just address that? I think it's a really interesting. I think we should do it. I think we should, for the public's sake, and obviously the board's sake as well, at this next meeting, explain what this group is attempting to do, and that we're attempting to, and the board is part and parcel to this. We're attempting to do two things. We're attempting to come up with the right configuration of buildings. That's one topic, and the second topic is we're trying to determine what's going to go inside of whatever number of buildings the board decides that is, most applicable to the way we're going to deliver education over the foreseeable future. So your presentation, Lisa, the one you just gave, is really insightful in terms of, what's going on. And obviously it's early days, but, what's going on in education inside a building? How do kids sit? What's the air quality? Whatever it is, it's things that people really haven't thought of. I guarantee you, until Chad brought up kids should stand, in classrooms, probably never really thought about that. And, interestingly, I had a conversation with a friend who is an education consultant, and he actually brought that up. Kids in the same grade or the same room, some kids like to stand, some kids like to sit, some kids like to hang from the roof. I mean, and the education is delivered in just it's not just a little chair and a desk anymore.
Exactly. And, I remember there was a student when I was principal of the high school. He stood in the back of class. He did it for 4 years. And everybody just knew that's what he did.
Yeah.
And brilliant student. And I tell you, Chad, there were so many moments, right, Phil, when I was like, God, Chad would love this. When we were in the room with all the furniture and I'm like, sit over here, Phil, bend this thing. So it was so enlightening. And the thing is that I'm already thinking about existing furniture we have, like, okay, we can pilot that. We can move this piece of furniture over here to start getting people to really feel what could be done in the space. So, I'm happy to present this. The one thing, the administrative team feels strongly in the same number of schools and grade configurations, but it has to be a board decision. So I think I would just say that we have to recommend what we're going to do.
Right.
The number of schools.
No, that's it. This is the process has started. And we're going to be coming to the board, the full board, with multiple decisions that we have to make. Number of buildings and what's going to go on inside the buildings. And all that's going to come at a cost. And we're going to go about it, what we think the best way to deliver education is to Weston. There'll be a cost associated with that. And like anything, we'll have a budget, and if it comes in, within the budget that the Board of Finance gives us, great. If not, then we have to, go back to the drawing boards and cut here and, make the proper determination. But I do think this upcoming meeting, especially if it's light on the calendar, is the appropriate time to do it.
There was another thing that we didn't talk a lot about, but I kind of feel like we have to start interweaving different things, and it also relates to our capital plan and everything. And that was, and that is school safety and the whole school safety component in there. We have these lovely sidewalks, and yet it strikes me when I'm in my golf cart and kids are running around outside at 1:30 in the afternoon, and people are literally walking through playground issues and playgrounds, and why are you here? And I'm just walking my dog, and the little kids, they're surrounded by little kids and the fencing, and we drove around and did a walkthrough on the campus. That all kind of ties in. Part of me feels like when Phil's going to be talking about the capital improvement needs in January, maybe we also need to consider touching on in December kind of the safety update of what we've done with, we've done some things with that funding that the town gave us. I don't know if I'm deviating now from the agenda, but I was just thinking about that.
Well, let's talk about that. I apologize. I just got a note that I have to jump on a call unexpectedly.
So we'll wrap up with a thought.
Wait, Peter, since 2 is a quorum, why don't let's not hastily.
Yeah. Don't jump off on my sake. I apologize.
You're good. So bug out, and we'll do a.
I'll catch up with you later.
Yeah.
So we have a quorum still, Chad. Good point.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
My other thought.
Wait, Peter, before we shift gears, can I piggyback on what Steve just said? Unless you're doing so as well, and then I can hold my comment.
You go for it, because I probably last day before I adjourn anyway, so.
All right. So, Lisa, I don't actually think that is off topic, the security thing. I really do think we should think about this process as a 1A and a 1B. 1A is communicating to everyone what we're trying to accomplish, and then 1B is how. So 1A is what happens inside the classroom, what the educational philosophy and mission and purpose is. Then 1B is configuration, what that means in terms of budget, how we're going to accomplish it. And it's much easier to help people align, have a shared vision, as opposed to just thinking about the constraints. So I actually think you're smart to bring up safety. I'll give you one data point. And by the way, can you hear me okay, Peter and Lisa and everyone?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So one data point would be, I just learned about this last year, but you would think that schools should always be secure, almost like, protected fortresses. This is a very macabre thing to bring up, and I apologize for doing so. But in the horrific event of a security issue, of a classroom shooter, it turns out you actually want to have a lot of ways for students to exit, and to exit quickly. You want buildings that are actually very quick to be vacated so that people can essentially get away from the danger quite quickly. So I know that's a very horrific thing to even bring up, that specter, but I just mention it, Lisa, simply because I do think these big concerns, safety, student mental health, life of the mind in the classroom, I think they inform what we do. So I think it's smart to bring it up. And then I guess the final point I would make is that if we are going to mention this in December, I think this should be 1A, and then all the constraints about how would be 1B. But that's just my perspective on it. Peter, any thoughts?
Well, 1A is the most creative part because that's inside the building, and we're covering that better and better with each meeting. 1B is sort of the hardware, right? How do we move guard else, right? So that's going to be more forks in the road. So that's a good way of divvying it up. We have just a few more minutes. I wanted to just wrap it up with a couple thoughts. And I wanted to repeat some of the major discussion points, because when I started the meeting, I said I looked at other agendas from our other committees, and typically there's meetings, right? And I'll ask this of Jody, right? There's meetings that are published, and Jody, do you typically write the meetings and publish them? Is that how we do this move forward? And then next meeting we vote on, right? So that was because this is our first meeting, but our next will be have the meetings, which is we have to comply to the rules of the agenda. And the second issue is we typically, if I looked at the other agendas, pick a date for the other meetings. I don't know if we've actually put these on the calendar as an ongoing meeting, but we'll have to figure out maybe Tuesday, January 11th as a placeholder for the next meeting.
That's a Thursday.
It's a Thursday.
Then Tuesday.
Ninth.
The 9th?
Yeah.
I can't be there because I have to speak at the PTO.
Would you rather do it Tuesday? Well, we may not have much to talk about on Tuesday, the 2nd. It's a pretty tough day to be having a meeting.
Yeah, no.
There's a policy committee meeting at that time. That's a standing meeting.
We
How
can-
about the 16th?
all right, as long as we get it in.
Oh.
Board meeting.
The 16th is the board meeting that night?
That night.
You're muted, Peter. Peter, you're muted? You're muted.
Wednesday, the 10th?
No, I'm okay. I'm not.
I can hear you, Peter.
Hold on. My earphones on.
I know it's getting complicated because of the,
Is that better?
You can do it any,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Better?
it's getting complicated because of the board meetings.
Yeah.
Well, the month of January is going to be tough.
Better?
as
Can you hear
said.
me?
Yes.
Yes.
As you said, Lisa, because of the budgets and all the budget meetings that we have in January.
Is this the most efficient way to schedule these? I also recognize the email can be challenging, but is it better to circulate a handful of dates and do it that way? Or you all tell me what's
I am,
best?
my sound has cut off.
No, we hear you now.
Oh, okay.
No, we hear you, Peter.
Yep,
All
we're
right. So
good.
where did we leave it for our next meeting? Did we rationalize our calendars?
Well, is there any way, I'm just going to throw this out there. Is there any way that, okay, facilities meets on Fridays.
Mhm.
Is there any way that we can meet the opposite Friday? Because I have standing meetings with the principals I have standing meetings in the morning on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday that I'm going to have to rearrange, and I can certainly do that. But what about Friday mornings opposite the facilities?
I'm okay with it. I can't speak for Steve, but
Communications meetings are the opposite Fridays.
Excuse me?
Communications are the opposite Friday. Well, it's the
No, there's
communications is the first Friday. Facilities is the second Friday. If you'd like to shoot for the third Friday,
Friday the 19th.
that
Because
might be better.
by then we've also had some budget meetings, things like
Mhm.
that. People have looked at it. That might be the best.
let's do that.
Because I really don't want to cancel. I don't want to meet with principals on Fridays. Fridays
Yeah.
are always crazy in a school building. And they don't need me being thrown into the mix.
Shall we keep the same time, the 8:15 to 9:15?
Yeah, if that works.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will schedule them for the third Friday of the month at 8:15 a.m.
Okay.
Is
Thank
that
you.
what we wanted? Okay.
Jody, we just have to double check that we don't have a conflict with our business finance and operations meeting. But that
Yes, I will.
Okay.
I will make sure.
Okay.
Hey, Peter, I have one last scheduling question. I can hold it to the end. Let me know what you want to do.
I have one more comment, and yes, just to once again reiterate, informing our fellow board members and the public, this upcoming public meeting is great. I think the insight that yes, we're entering the budget season, and there might be elements within the budget ask that relate back to the EOC repairs, outside consultants, trips, whatever we decide needs to be funded moving forward. So it's timely to put those onto a slide as an ask. And then, yeah, Chad, you can finish, and then I'll just do the adjournment.
One question is simply about visiting other schools or institutions. I just want to know, because on a couple documents, there looks to be like a closing period, meaning we're trying to get that in by a certain point. And first of all, I guess the question is just, is there a closing point for that? On one document, I saw that we were going to be done with that by the beginning of January or so. Lisa, others, are we thinking that we'll wrap up any kind of visits or site exploration by that point, or do we have a longer timeline?
My suggestion would be, we wrote that in the district improvement plan. We report out on the plan in January. I think the beauty of the plan is it's a process plan, so it's got to be tweaked. I think it's very, I would extend it, quite frankly, maybe into the spring. I think that we have to get a better sense. We've seen maybe 3 or 4 schools. Winter is always not the best way to plan to go into schools between the sickness and the weather. So I think that when we report out in January on the improvement plan, it's got to reflect some of the tweaks and revisions based on our current work, which we can certainly do.
Sure. And then what is the best way to kind of solidify the finalists, meaning where should we visit? We kind of want to see, I think, probably, the best of the best. So any suggestions on creating that to-do list of where we're going to visit?
I'll give you an example. There's this wonderful magazine. It's an Ed Design magazine, and it has all the award-winning schools in it. I think that we got to get a better sense with our faculty teams and everything else of of what specifically we want to look at. Like, I would love to go to that school in Minnesota just because it's a sustainability school. However, you know, maybe there's something closer too. Maybe there's a different way. I mean, we can't be flying all over the country. So I think
No.
we have to be a little bit planful. I mean, Drew Walters went to a school that's affiliated with UConn. He and Laura did. They loved it. We went to Sandy Hook, terrific school. There are other schools. I think we have to be a little bit, you know, planful and intentional on where we go.
Yeah, and there may be, I mean, look, it is the 21st century after all. There may be ways to do like a video walkthrough or a Zoom experience of the Minnesota school. I guess just the more nuts and bolts question is, do we want to start a list or, you know, like a group of finalists or something? Or should we be kind of doing our own research? Or do you have a list that you want to suggest as these are your candidates? How would you like to proceed with that?
I think we got to get everybody on the shared mindset of what we're doing. I have a preliminary list of things that I'd like to look at. I would welcome the input of others. One of the things, though, that I've learned is, you know, there's some great schools, for example, out west. Well, the climate is completely different there. So you have to also consider that. And you can find a lot online. You know, I remember years ago when we moved to Project Lead the Way, I found it they won an award, and I called and I went to New Jersey to see the school. So we can even do that. You know, you can look at the award-winning schools, get suggestions from studies, you know, these consultants that we've worked with, and then you kind of decide how we're going to go about it. There's a school, for example, that's near my house in Florida. It's some amazing magnet high school and elementary school. I never would have known it was there. Well, I go down there all the time. I'm going to go and make an appointment and see the school. I think it's that kind of thing that we should encourage people and then take photos. Like we took a lot of photos when we were in EdSpace and a lot of photos when we were at Sandy Hook. And I asked, can I share these photos? They said, yes, you can share them in terms of presentations, things like that. You know, so I think that's kind of how we should proceed. Okay.
Peter, over to you.
All right, we'll wrap it up. Right. I think that's a slide for the December. Like we have this.
Okay. Can you stay on an extra minute, Peter?
Can I? Yes. All right. So do I have to move for adjournment and then get a second? So I move for adjournment of the December 5th, 2023 Educational Optimization Committee meeting at 9:11 a.m. May I have a second?
I second.
Can all vote aye or nay? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We're good. We're adjourned. Thank you. That
guys.
was a wonderful kickoff meeting.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you.
Chad,
Bye.
you're welcome to stay on too. Chad,
Okay, sure. Sure, I'll stay on.
Okay.